Most leaders spend decades chasing success without ever asking what happens after you reach it. Eventually, there comes a quieter season where achievement no longer answers the deeper questions, and many leaders realize they've built a career without preparing for who they'll become beyond that career. Welcome to the Second Voice podcast, where we uncover the conversations that leaders don't have out loud. I'm your host, Louisa Hogan, and today we're exploring what my guest, Mark Vincent, calls the third turn of leadership. And it's the stage where success and identity, legacy, and succession collide, and where many accomplished leaders quietly face the hardest transition of their lives. Mark is a pioneer in multiple fields, and I can't wait to explore that with him. And he partners with accomplished third turn leaders committed to developing the current and next generation of effective leadership. He is a strategic advisor in valuation of firms, a certified executive process consultant, and a practitioner-scholar of organizations and leadership. He has created and shepherds the Sage Group Collective, which is an emergency board meeting panel for executives and business owners addressing a significant opportunity or challenge. And his most recent book, because he can add author to that amazing list of accomplishments, is The Maestro Effect: Future Value, Succession, and Legacy in Business. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me and for finding a time to meet with me. I know we live on opposite sides of the world, but I'm so glad you joined me today. Thank you.
My morning and your night, and I'm really glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I've read out your bio, but what does that all mean? Tell us more about you and the work that you do and what brought you to this podcast today.
Well, sure. I won't go through a bio. When you've had a few birthdays, you collect experiences, and where do you start and where do you stop? But the thing that really got me going was loving the need, or loving the ability to provide for the need when you've got difficult process, when you've got a tough decision to make. So I did some graduate work in that area at a time when social science was catching up and starting to say, wow, instead of just somebody dominating everybody, what if we really did work in teams? What if there really was good governance and good collegiality in a workplace environment? And because I was studying it and was just landing in the public space, a career was born that I didn't intend. I just got asked, will you come help us? I was right place, right time. The methods worked, and my career just kept going. And as it went, more and more, I got involved in what we might call the most difficult of those decision-making times. And that's when there is business continuity and succession in play. And to make all of that short and truncated to right now, I have sold off my shares in the company that I helped to found and run. So I've lived through first, second, third turn, and my practice just got deeper and deeper and deeper into that space. And so I spend most of my time now with people who are moving toward divesting and putting their leadership in the hands of others, and they intend to be fairly planful and deliberate about slingshotting those successors into the future. So they're committed to removing obstacles and paving a path. They know they can't make the successor succeed, but they know they could make it possible for them to fail. So they are removing those kinds of things. That means I'm not talking to people so much who are saying, I've decided I'm retiring in 6 months. Can you help me? I'm primarily with a person who's saying, as a visionary, 5-6 years out from now, I'm going to be done. And I'm having an, oh my God moment. Like, what's going to replace this? How are we going to keep this going? I have all the major customers in my portfolio, or all the donors if it's a nonprofit, and I don't have a successor, or any number of things. And one of those big things is I don't have a life to go to. I can't let go unless I'm grabbing onto something else. I won't know who I am, or something along that line. So we have this whole person, the internal part of them, the external part of them, the connection to the organization. All of that's in play as we start to architect their very unique journey, because they've had a unique career by then, into what comes next, so that those successors can be slingshotted and they're looking forward to the life that they're going to.
It's such important work. And what I find amazing about that is how many people don't think about this sort of thing, right?
Right.
So, and I think part of the problem may be It's really hard to imagine yourself in the future leaving the thing that you absolutely love doing, that you're really good at. It's a very difficult thing to imagine. So people avoid thinking about it. So how is it that you are able to find people, A, who think about this, or B, like, how can we encourage people to think about this? Because I think it's important
Yeah.
work, and
Right.
people don't think about it.
Well, let's just start with your first question there.
Mm.
The percentage of people who are natural entrepreneurs, natural visionaries, that's a small percentage to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And three-fourths, four-fifths almost of the people who enter the workforce aren't going to be in that kind of a position. They're going to be frontline workers. They're going to be very content if they're well paid, if they've got a good working environment, good work culture, to be the customer service reps, to be the salesperson, to be the technician. Among them are a group of people who always say, there's something more here, or I could fix this, or what if we tried it that way? And they can't get settled until they're in a spot where they give that a try. And they're more content to take a risk than they are to keep things as they are. And it's among that group of people that you find those who will actually have that kind of a conversation, or who are
Mm-hmm.
more open to it. However, uh, Louisa, I want to touch on one thing you said, that most people don't think about it. I agree. And what I'm going to say next will sound like I disagree. People have a thought about it. And
Mm-hmm.
the thought is, I will think about this later.
Yeah.
So that's their thought. I'll think about this later. I'll deal with this later when I can. But the key transition is to see this as not a luxury, not a perk, not something you get to do if you succeed. It is a key ingredient to success, to keep that long term in front of you, to keep the stewardship notionality in the center of your thinking, that I will hand this to someone, that my success is tied to being able to hand it to someone, or the value that I'm putting in it, I will not be able to get out.
Mm.
So that is a key aspect just to keep in mind, is that the first thought is to banish the thinking. And
Yeah.
so to get it into the present really matters for the success we want to build now.
Yeah. Do you find leaders struggle not only think about succession, because I think they do, but to see it, be able to picture somebody else taking over from them? Like,
Oh,
do they
yeah.
struggle with that? What is that? Why do they struggle with that so much?
Well, one thing is organizations, no matter how mature they are, no matter how sophisticated their operations are, how long they've existed, they're all houses of cards. They
Yeah.
easily collapse. It just takes an event and boom, oh, wow, what we had is gone. Poof. So it's not helpful as a leader to go around saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. They have to exude confidence. They have to have certainty. They have to have a competence to lead. They have to have multiple scenarios that they could pursue with if then kinds of environments. So to think about who else could do this when you have staved off so many episodes that could have brought failure. That's difficult to do. You learn to trust your judgment because you're constantly surrounded by people whose judgment doesn't rise to what would have helped you succeed. They're not seeing the whole thing, but they still
Mm.
tell you what to do. They don't think about what their desire will bring as far as impacts on other people or on the whole of the organization. They just want what they want. But you can see that. So you stop really being able to see other people as something other than helpful, but threatening at the same time. So who around you is gaining that full view, or who do you think could, that you're now going to invest in? And the best at this, the ones who have the best practices, actually cultivate many people, knowing they might actually bless their competitors with leaders.
Mm.
But in doing so, they're going to get the leaders they need, and they will make their field better, and they'll kind of salt and season the rest of their marketplace with leaders that they could hire back at a certain point. But
Mm.
if they're threatened, you will actually push away the possibility of successors. And that's the big fear. You're going to ruin what I've done. Why? Because that's a track record. You keep everybody around me ruins it. So now I'm the omnicompetent, omniscient, omnipresent leader who can never let go.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready for the mistakes, for the bruises, for the bumps, for the disappointments on the way to finding the successor.
Yeah. And that's why you got to start early. But what complex self-talk is in there, right? Because
Whew,
there's
yeah.
fear in there. There's fear that nobody can do it as well as me. Then there's the mistakes that happen along the way, and then that proves the fear is correct.
Yeah.
There's complex thinking in there designed to keep you safe. But in the end, it's just going to hold you and your organization or your business back, right? So
Yeah,
it's
you
something that
just
needs to be
nailed it.
overcome.
You just nailed it because you are pointing to reactive types of thinking, stuff
Yeah.
that's stuck in our amygdala. Is this a lion? Is it going to eat me? And so we're
Yes.
reactive. So we're given to anger, or we're given to anxiety. We're given to pushing in, getting aggressive, assertive, staving the dangers off in some way. And so our reflective thinking, our long-term ability to analyze and decide, that tends to flee from us if we're given to that reactive form of leadership. And we could add some of the other kind of internal self-talk that's going on, like, I should have known this, or I'm responsible for this. This one is on me. Well, as a leader, we have to take responsibility, but we also have to know where the responsibility rests inside the organization. And if we're the
Mhm.
only one that's responsible, then we should just set up a solo shop, our little Quonset hut or whatever, where people can come stand in line while we serve them. If we're going to have employees, if we're going to have others working with us, we have to somehow create a culture of trust, a way to evaluate, a way to problem solve together, where there is both clarity but also safety, so that people will tell you what they're observing and so you can problem solve together. But that internal self talk has to match that.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be reactive and you're just going to be facing
Yes.
the same problem again, right?
Again, and
Yeah.
maybe with more money involved or more people involved, but we'll
Yeah.
just circle back and face it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. And what do you find? Have you found people who've left it too long and is it ever too late to plan for this?
Um, there have been a couple of clients where I would have said, you let it go too long, because now what they're doing is playing cleanup, and
Mhm.
the toxicity, often within their family, is so high. It will take about as long to get trust back as they spent destroying it, because they wouldn't trust in the first place, or would circumvent other leaders, or insulted their family, made their family sacrifice for things that they were wanting to do. Like, I want you in the business, but I'm going to underpay you because you're a family member, and that kind of thing. So I've seen that. I've had a couple now, where I've sat down with them, and as we started to put their architecture together, to be able to say something like this. I'm creating a composite here of several clients, but this is probably your best chance to do it.
Mhm.
There's still enough trust that outweighs the anger that everybody has. So if we do it now, we're going to get through it. But you
Mhm.
can't postpone it one more time and assume you'll get to it someday. It's going to break the trust. There have been those moments, but for the most part, I would say to anyone who asks me, if you haven't started, then today's your day to start, and it's the best time to get started. So that, it doesn't mean you have to have a very concrete, specific plan. You don't have to have answers for everything, but you can start to create a map that leads to your next conversation. You can start to schedule the time within your calendar for higher order executive thinking. And that's what we do with our Maestro level leader cohorts. Those folks
Mhm.
might not be thinking about it at any other time, but once a month for 3 hours with 7 or so other people who are on that same kind of a journey, they're working at this kind of planning in front of each other with confidentiality, but it just creates a thrumming in their life to keep pushing on that. And usually, about 3 years in, a plan has emerged that they can act on. And it often, because they're touching it so often, it often brings that future nearer the present because they've made decisions in light of what they can see out there, as opposed to that, I can't think about it now, which postpones the start.
Definitely. Does it take a big identity shift internally, for people to start thinking about this? Or, of course, there's an identity shift when you leave and somebody takes over from you. But, do you have to begin that identity shift from when you start planning?
I think for most people, it does require an identity shift. I have met some really precious people who enter into it from a sort of steward leader perspective, very, very servant hearted. What I've been given as a trust, I'm going to be giving it to somebody else. I have to think about that at all times. And they work that in. Those are like old souls. There are a
Hmm.
few. For most of us, we have been trained repeatedly in family and in the academy to perform so that we're noticed and called upon and promoted and given more opportunity so that we can succeed. So this drives a deep neural pathway and response that I have to show up strong, well, competent, and even fake it until I make it, which leads to being over promoted sometimes where you don't have the skills that match. It leads to us calling upon our past experiences, which literally breaks our ability to be competent. Because if we're calling on our past experience, we're shutting down our learning posture. We're
Hmm.
not allowing ourselves to say, I don't know, can you teach me? That
Hmm.
sounds like failure. So I know this, or I can do this, or I'm supposed to figure it out. So to move into the learning posture that's required to live into continuity and succession planning when you've never done it before requires a shift. And then you're also realizing this deeper you get into it. When this is done, and even as we're moving through this, I'm giving up power. I'm giving up control. And if I don't, no one's ever going to be able to pick it up. And I'm going to be in a spot where my voice won't matter as much, where people aren't going to bow down to me, quote unquote, because I signed their paycheck.
Hmm.
And who am I in those environments? So when I'm working with someone, I'm often asking them if they don't have it in their life, like, where are you the follower? That's a skill set, and good followership has many qualities that are very similar to great leadership. So where are you not in control? Where are you taking direction in your life? How can we start building some of that out, even in your workplace, so that it's not so unfamiliar, so strange, so terrifying. And you can actually look at that and say, I'm getting good at this. I'm getting more skilled at this than I have been.
Hmm. It's so amazing because to me it's like so much more complex than identity shift, right? It's identity
Yes.
shift, but it's also our understanding of what vulnerability means and what true resilience means. It's not that performative strength. It's not pretending that
Yeah.
you know everything and that everything's okay. And a lot of that is, beyond identity too. And I work with founders and I work with executive leaders. I do resilience, especially through change and transformation. And it's amazes me how much, they cling to that they have nothing else in their life but working 12 to 15-hour days, and everything else takes a back seat, and they don't have anything but this identity of their leadership or their
Yeah.
business or anything like that. But then also that whole, like I said, that definition of what it means to be to have other things in my life and what it means to be resilient and what it means to be vulnerable. It's fascinating. I
Yeah.
find leadership fascinating in that way and what it creates
Yeah.
in people and the culture out there.
It strikes me that your clients are very fortunate to have you because of that perspective and your ability to describe it. You've just put definition on a metaphor I often use, which
Mhm.
is the embrace of the mission or the embrace of the enterprise that you made when you took that seat to be the president, CEO, executive director. That embrace becomes a chokehold over
Mhm.
time.
So true.
The ability to embrace it is not the same as the ability to release it,
Mhm.
and the ability to release it so that there's space for someone else to enter into that embrace without it becoming a chokehold. Like that's the way we want to develop people. We want to develop them into a leadership perspective that already includes this servant-heartedness, steward
Mm-hmm.
leader perspective I'm describing. But that's a whole different skill set than just showing up and being competent.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's, yeah, I mean, I'd say people are very lucky to have you working with them because I honestly don't think a lot of people get to this point where they actually think about this and then they are thinking about retirement. And it's okay. I think also I want to say it's okay to love your work so much that
Yes.
you don't think about it, right? But the reality is something's going to happen or you are going to get to a point where it's just not going to be tenable anymore, you know?
Yes. And there are things about the work that you love so much that you can carry forward with you into the life to go to.
Mm.
It might not mean that you get to control all the agenda of the executive leadership team meetings anymore. You can't just gather your family and your children and say, okay, I'm in charge here and now we're going to have a meeting. You don't get to do that. But there
Mhm.
are things that you enjoy, whether it's camaraderie or generativity and creativity or the ability to see a metric met or some kind of project basis or whatever. There are things that you can incorporate in that life to come. There has to be a strong belief that life is abundant. So if
Mhm.
you had a vision that you were passing that along in your company and you weren't just being performative, well, then how do you carry that forward? That there's an abundance for me, for those I love to come, even in a time when maybe my skills diminish and my physicality isn't what it was or whatever else. There are other things that are growing. There's more of a full flower or a maturing or a wisdom I get to carry forward into something new. Let's have that conversation. That's so much more fun than
Mhm.
I'm so sad about my losses. I don't know who I am anymore, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's finding meaning, right?
That,
And I
exactly.
think it's about finding meaning throughout your career, not just at the end. I think, there's
Right.
work to be done in that, right?
Yes.
I love that you also talk about something called brain athletes. You say executives are brain athletes and
Yes.
they do that under high pressure. Do you think people can be brain athletes, in other areas of their life and they can, doesn't have to be just with their work life? Or what do you mean by
Oh,
brain athletes?
yeah. I'm so glad you asked that. Today is a special day because we're actually celebrating the launch of this book, The
Yep.
Maestro Effect. And I can't believe it, really. I've never had this experience before, but the Zoom license gives us so many seats for this virtual event. And they're all claimed. So we've got a global group of people that are coming just to say, woohoo, we did it. This book is out there now. And that's a lot of fun. And in that process, I've been asked, because I'm not running the event. The director for Maestro Level Leaders, Sarah Harstead, is going to, MC it and a number of other things. But I've got 5 minutes to make some comments, and I want to talk about exactly this. Uh, when I started in my career, we were still pretty much in a labor economy.
Mhm.
And voices like Peter Drucker were saying, we're shifting in this digital age that's coming now that laptops are starting to land on everybody's desks. We're shifting to a knowledge economy. So you will know things, brain and body, that you will take to wherever you are employed. Well, that has shifted since then to an information economy. And we're quickly capitalizing on that with AI and everything,
Mhm.
where you don't get to take your knowledge. Whatever knowledge you take, the company is capturing. It's in the cloud. It's going to live beyond you where it has been deposited. And now even that's leaking, and anybody has access to these things. So we're really moving into a time where we're going to go to what you might call, I haven't decided yet, but we call it like a relational economy, a networked economy, or
Mhm.
I'm starting to go more to, I think it's more of a wisdom economy. And
Mm.
that is how you, again, with your brain, are able to move across domains, see connections, and create something that doesn't exist yet, that is not yet in the cloud, is not yet in the space, because of the connections you have with other people as well as technology. That requires a brain athleticism that people aren't being trained for. So that means people who have been jacks of all trades, people who have some self-made entrepreneurial kinds of vision, people who get cross-trained, who have varied experiences. They're going to be, I think, the people who are in high demand as problem solvers and as leaders in years to come, because they aren't going to have this response. I've never done it before, or I wasn't trained for that, or that's not the software that I run. That response shows I'm in a single domain, as opposed to, what if we connected this to that? What do you think could happen? People who think like that have an elasticity going in their brain, and they've been trained to look across disciplines. We can self-train for some of that. We can also create opportunity for some of that. I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, a lot of the work that I do as well is getting leaders to have more systems thinking. So not just you
Right.
can't work in your little silo anymore. You can't, just be specializing in your area and never talk to anybody else in your whole business or your whole organization. Everybody needs to be thinking of the whole system all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
And I think, especially as you say, in the age of AI, that's going to just become more and more of a need. You just, yeah, so glad you say you can't just specialize anymore, because it's just not going to work. It's just not going to
No.
work. And the
And that's
speed of change
disheartening.
too.
If you were trained as a specialist, that's
Mm,
disheartening. If you're out there as a subject matter expert,
mm,
oh my, and so there's this. As a young person, people who worked in the automobile industry were having to be retooled because a lot of things that they were doing was becoming mechanized. It wasn't specialized to just them doing repetitive labor. So they had to get retrained, figure out new jobs. And now you have people who train specifically in tech, specifically as subject matter experts, whose specialized knowledge is now so commodified and so cheap, they're going to be not needed. And
mm.
so their retraining, their redevelopment is going to be important. It's going to be interesting to see what academies, what trade schools, what companies gear up to be able to help people take this ability to learn, but to apply it in new ways.
Yeah, for sure. It just goes to show how important your work is even there, right? Because I think of
Yes.
applying what you do, it's going to need to be applied on a on a greater level
Well
across a
said.
lot more people, right?
Well
So,
said.
to people listening, who might be thinking about, I've achieved lots, or I'm thinking about my achievements. I have goals to achieve. I have, I want to achieve lots of things. But now, listening to this conversation, they're thinking about, okay, I need to build legacy. What do they need to be thinking about in order to shift their thinking from building achievement to building legacy?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the definition of legacy, because for a great number of people, I find they think that means I have to think about my fame, um, my reputation, my PR mojo.
Hmm.
And that's not what is meant here. We can't even control that. We can do things about it, but we can't control that. People will have their own perceptions of us, and they will pass that along. And regardless of what we are. So legacy has to do with kind of like the ripples that go out from us and influence things that we might not see the results. But, I just saw this video and I passed it along in a letter that I write to all of my clients every week. And I'm not going to remember her name. She was the premier violinist in South Korea, taught many, many students, and she retired in 2014. She died a couple of years ago, but there's this little video out there of her retirement where they call her up. She's the first woman to ever be the concert master, the first violinist, and all. They give her flowers, and she turns to face the audience, and the orchestra kicks into "I Did It My Way," and she doesn't know that that's happening, right? So she's surprised. She turns around, and they're playing this, and she's in tears. But when it gets into the chorus, the curtain behind the orchestra pulls back, and there are 3 rows in this balcony. It might be a choral work or whatever, but 3 rows of her students
Wow.
playing along. I mean, chills.
Yeah.
Few of us get to see our legacy while we're
Mm.
alive.
Yeah.
Someone took the effort to pull all of that in, not just so she could witness it, but so the world could witness it. But if that didn't happen, there would be things happening. And those folks are now teaching others who are teaching others, and it just keeps spreading up. That's
Mm.
legacy.
Yeah.
And along with it will be people who say, well, I don't think she was a great teacher.
Of
Or
course.
she didn't. Yeah. I mean, we'll collect both of those. All we can do in our life, all we have choice over is to help create conditions that lets those ripples flow.
Yeah. You remind me so much of something my husband says, and I love it. He says, we have to plant the seeds of the trees today that we'll never sit in the shade of,
Right.
you know?
And my
And
colleague, Kristen Evenson, who helped me do with Maestro Level Leader, says, and then we get to see the fruit growing
yeah,
on other
yeah.
people's trees.
Yeah. That's right. And that tree will make other trees and other fruit, right? But you'll never see it. And that's what legacy is, right?
Yes.
That's true legacy. Somebody will
Yes.
sit under the shade of your tree one day and they'll make their own tree and grow some fruit there. It's
Right.
a wonderful thought. I get
Beautiful
chills
expression.
thinking about it, right? Because
Yeah.
for me, my own business, it's 10 years old. And weirdly, I've been thinking about what's next and how I want to grow it and who I want to pass it on to, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are like, my business dies with me. I'm not interested
Hmm.
in passing it on, and that's fine. But for me, I'm like, well, actually, no, I'd love this work to continue one day, and I'd love somebody else to find passion in it. And I'd love to continue to see people and know that it's the ones. For me, it's always the ones. If I help one person today and that one person helps one other person, then my job here is done. Right.
Yes.
And
Right.
I'd like to see that passed on. So it's interesting how different people think of, succession and passing their businesses on. It's not all the same.
It really is. It is a unique recipe,
Mm.
and Louisa, I'd say that puts you in the herd of unicorns
Yeah.
because it's a rare thing to arrive at this place
Mm.
to even have the opportunity to pass it along.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to, you are taking a unique recipe, a unique model, your lessons, your operations, whatever, and then you're crafting it so it can go in someone else's hands. That's a journey where others of us who've been through it can watch you do it. We might be able to have empathy and sympathy and be in conversation with you as you do it. But in the end, they're your decisions. It's your journey. There isn't one other person's journey that exactly matches the one
Yeah.
that you're on.
And for you personally, what's your thoughts on your legacy and what you are doing now? What are your internal thoughts about all of this for you?
Yeah. There's probably two things to say there. I have a standard response that I mean with all sincerity. You have to ask those who I've worked with and that I love, what they've taken. They're the witnesses to that. They're the ones who will do the next thing. And I think that's just an accurate description, right? But what I say for myself is that with all the life circumstances that I've had and the choices I've made, I arrived at this place where now my sense of mission is that I love leaders who love leaders. So I get, in this case, now that I'm just meeting you, I get to love you as one
Mm.
who is investing in other founders and other leaders, wanting to see them have their best life and to pass that along to others. I get to love that and to bring that to the room so that I can look at the person, perceive them, respond to them, learn how they learn, speak to them inside their learning environment. And if I get it wrong, to be teachable so I can be better as an accompaniment to their life as they do that. And as they invest in others who succeed, like who can actually get launched, then you can see that that's the fruit. And when you see that person getting launched where they're thinking, who will come after me? We're not going to get this wrong next time either. And that's front and center for them. Then you say, well, this legacy is actually happening. But it's not my legacy, it's all of ours collectively. I didn't
Mm.
appoint their leader, their successor. And I'm not in the conversation necessarily with that successor about who will follow them. But to see those ripples go is the fruit. And there are stories like that I can I can smile over and feel warm about, which helps to offset the ones where you're like, oh my, why did they do that? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
go for the success stories to keep your batteries full for sure.
for sure. Well, I think you're doing incredible work, and I'm so glad you joined me today to share that and to share with the world what you are doing, because I think it is very important work, and I love that you love leaders who love leaders, because I think that's what the world needs, right? We need
Yes.
leaders who love leaders and who want to bring leaders up with them, because that's what it's all about, right? It's not about
Hmm.
being on your throne and nobody ever comes up to join you.
Right.
So,
And cutting
yeah,
the throats of those who might,
yeah,
figuratively or literally. No, it's not
yeah.
about that.
It's
Right.
not about that. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you? If people want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, want to buy your book, you say it's
Yeah.
launching today. By the time this comes out, it would have been well launched. But tell us where
Yeah.
we can find it.
Yeah. markelvincent.com is the
Excellent.
place to go. It's kind of a gateway to some of my writing. You can access the book from there. We can correspond. So just the simplest way.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure people will find their way to you from this podcast. So thank you again for joining us. To everyone listening, what I took from today is that the third turn of leadership isn't about holding on to your relevance. It isn't about holding on to your identity that you have grown over many years of leadership, but it's about becoming the kind of leader whose impact continues long after you've stepped out of the spotlight. And I think that is an incredibly important idea to have in your mind as you progress through your leadership, and to not be threatened by that. So until next time, thank you for joining the Second Voice podcast. Take care.